So I had a great session with Nick yesterday, just kind of workshopping, kind of trying to step back from the detail of what's going on with SRO. You know, the business is growing well and there's a lot of moving parts, but trying to step back and kind of sit in what's happening there to try and understand what the next phase and what the next evolution should look like. Probably the biggest takeout is less about the detail of the conversation, more about the nature of the conversation. So it's very easy to get stuck in a rhythm of saying, hey, let's grab 30 minutes and apply ourselves to solving problem XYZ. And that can be really useful and productive when you've got lots of things you need to address and you need to kind of time box that stuff and say, we're going to make sure we come out of this room at this particular point in time with a solution. So I'm all for that. But every now and then, just soaking in a problem can be really, really valuable. And I've found that particularly with Nick, we've done this a couple of times. We were in Adelaide earlier in the year. At the end of a long day, we just spent an hour or two over drinks and dinner just reflecting on a whole series of situations. And you get to this tipping point where suddenly things become clear. It's like the fog clears. The other analogy that came to mind for me is often when you're stretching, you're just about to exercise or you've done some exercise or whatever, and you're just going to go and do some stretching. A lot of the recommendations are make sure you stretch each time for 30 seconds. So hamstring for 30 seconds, whatever else. But the other method is what you do is you hold your stretch until you get to a point where you feel your muscles and your tendons relax and release. So you hold it for as long as it needs to be held until you hit that tipping point and things release. And that's what it feels like when I'm having these longer form conversations with CEOs. You can get in there and be really productive and structured in the way in which you have a conversation. But I think it's also really useful to have longer, more free-flowing, open-form conversations, a bit like just sitting in that stretch until it releases. So sit in the conversation, sit with the problem until you hit that tipping point and the fog clears. And what you often find is that it might be an hour or 2 hours of conversation and there's only one or two particular outcomes, but those outcomes come with such clarity that the following day, and I've already experienced it now because I've seen what Nick's done in the last 24 hours, the following day, there's a flurry of activity that's off the back of huge amounts of clarity. So with that clarity, you can then take a bunch of action. So you have a long meeting, it feels like a long time, but you relax into it and you hit that tipping point, you have the breakthrough. There's one or two clear discoveries or pieces of clarity you walk away with. And with those in hand, you can then go and execute a whole bunch of stuff. So you know, that longer form conversation I had with Nick was hugely productive. And, you know, it makes me think that I need to start working that into just the cadence of the conversations I'm having with all the other CEOs at the moment as well.
So I thought I'd just talk through process just to give you a feel for how I use it. I mean, I've got a Remarkable. A lot of people say, what do you reckon of that Remarkable? I'm still getting used to it, but once you have a process, it kind of helps. So what I do is I bring up all my board papers on my laptop and then I read through those and then I'm taking notes here, really trying to articulate where's the focus area for me for this meeting. And if I'm the chair, it'll help me drive that meeting and make sure that I'm keeping it focused. If I'm not the chair, then it makes sure that I've got clear in front of me the main aspects of the meeting I want to get out of it. So like having the stuff on the screen, having the board packs there and making sure I'm taking good notes here. I also read a kind of interesting concept about note taking, and it was a really simple one actually. This concept of during the meeting you'll take notes. After the meeting, in your reflection time, you should make notes. So taking notes is literally just like capturing stuff as it's coming you through. So whether or not you're taking notes of what they're saying or taking notes of what you're thinking on the fly, then at the end of the meeting, the trick is to sit down, reflect on the meeting while it's fresh in your mind and while the notes are right in front of you, and then to make some notes. And that comes at the bottom of your pack. So then that's what you read back on in a month's time at the next meeting. You read back on the notes that you made, because that's your really kind of pithy summary of what happened in the meeting and where the focus needs to be.
Just finished quick chat in the car on the way across to my next meeting. Had a chat to Michael about a couple of deals that he's got in the pipeline. Really good, straight down the middle, small business acquisition, the industrial space, electrical services, revenue around 10 to 12 million, earnings margins between 15 and 25, older owners looking to retire, you know, ticking all the boxes. And so now it's just a matter of how do you get from that point of identifying that opportunity and starting that relationship through to a point where you're ready to start talking turkey and get down to business with a deal. So he was pumped, and rightly so. I think he's got a good couple of opportunities there. So now just grabbing a sandwich with a private investor who is relatively new to investing in search and ETA, just catching up to see where he's at and if there's any opportunities we can partner on. Just got out of a good lunch with Stuart. So he's an investor in the search fund space. He's got some experience as like a operator of small software, like accelerating small software businesses, and has had a few exits and so has a bit of capital. He's still got fire in the belly though, so wants to get engaged in his next kind of growth and leadership opportunity, which it sounds like he's pretty close to securing. But he, in the meantime, he's keen to look for some searches to back, and I'm making a few introductions for him. We had that discussion, which is quite a common one for investors to have in this space, about whether or not it's better to back the searcher at the search phase or come in when they've got a deal on the table. The generally accepted kind of approach, which is probably private equity led, is, talk to me when you've got a deal on the table and then I'll have a look and see whether or not I want to invest in it. But what that misses out on is the importance of the operator or the searcher or the entrepreneur in that mix. And it just assumes that you don't really need to know much about that person, or you can assess them pretty quickly at the same time as assessing the deal that they're putting in front of you. But one of those advantages of getting involved from the start of the search phase is that you get 6, 12, 18, sometimes 24 months of experience with that entrepreneur to see how they think, see how they behave, how do they respond to setbacks, do they have grit, are they determined? Can they think about problems in a novel way? Do they accept coaching? You can learn all of those things about the person through the search phase when you've only committed a relatively small amount of capital. So when it comes to the deal, when they identify the business to buy, you've got the confidence in them so that you can focus purely on the deal and know that you're going to then back someone that you trust in to run that deal. Or alternatively, you might, through the search process, decide that they're not a good fit. They're not the kind of person that you want to continue to work with, and therefore you've got the opportunity to back out at that point. And I guess there's a middle ground where you might actually really like them and think they're a great person, but when you assess them against the deal that they've put on the table, you realise that actually they're a good person and that's a good business, but the two of them don't fit. So then you can start to help them steer themselves towards the kind of business and the kind of deal that's going to suit them, because you know who they are and what might be a good fit for them. So yeah, it was a really interesting discussion, and I always enjoy hearing that there are multiple sides to that story, and I'm not just constantly hearing the same message all the time. There are investors in the network that come at it from every different perspective, and what's encouraging about that is it means that from my perspective as an investor, I can continue to surround myself with lots of different and unique perspectives, but also for entrepreneurs who are looking to get backed by investors, there's enough diversity that they can not only build diversity into their cap table, but there's a higher likelihood that they'll be able to find their people and get backed by people that can help them and support them. Yeah, on to my next meeting. It's going to be a coffee catch up with an introduction that was made by one of the CEOs, someone in their network that wants to learn a bit more about the opportunity from an ETA and a search perspective. So off to catch up with him now. Wow, what a day. Finished off my last meeting just then. Had a really busy back to back, but I loved it. I do enjoy having the ability to sit quietly and think through things and, not feel like I'm overwhelmed and catch up with a whole bunch of admin, but equally a day like today, which coincidentally I have again tomorrow, meetings of all different types, working with CEOs that I'm already engaged with, potential investors of new deals, potential entrepreneurs that are thinking about what their future looks like, through to business owners that are considering, what their next step might be. I really enjoy just the quick fire kind of movement from this one to the next one to the next one. So anyway, I made it. Now time to head home and recharge, because tomorrow's a pretty similar program.